Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
Each week, we come at you guys with different illustrator interviews or fantastic questions from listeners just like yourself. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
Brand spanking
You're a little
new.
too smooth with that, Lee. You're getting smooth, you know?
I want to get a brand spanking new t-shirt made. It just says 3 Point Perspective. Learn something brand spanking new.
Can I start with a disc golf analogy story? Because I know
Please.
our audience
We've been dying for this.
can't get enough of this. But it's true. I use, like I said before on the podcast, I use other things in my life to influence kind of what I'm doing with illustration. And so here's something that happened the other day that I thought was a great teachable moment. I am trying to get better. I'm good, but I'm not great. And I'm trying to get better. I'm sure Will can identify with this in pickleball. And sometimes you gotta go back to kind of square one and try to retool something, like either get better at what your weakness is or whatever. But what that means is you actually get worse for a little while. And so I had a tournament that I was already entered in. Meanwhile, I'm trying to change these few things, and the tournament's here, and it's freezing. It's 26 degrees. It's snowing. This was on Sunday. And I go in like I'm in between what I used to do and what I'm trying to do. And it was messy. Let's just put it that way. I got last place in a tournament, which that never happens. But I knew it going in. I was like, all right, I just got to let the punches land where they will, and use it as research and kind of see. Oh, there's a dog barking in the background. But I'll continue with Will here. But anyway, so I knew it was going to be bad, and it was. And so midway through the round, where I'd normally be like, oh man, I'm in last place, I started thinking to myself, okay, what is the takeaway here? I'm not going to win. I'm not going to come from behind like some magical Sports Illustrated story.
Right.
But I really started paying attention. Okay, what are the things that I want to work on, and how can I use this? And I got last place, and I came home, and using the data from that round was awesome. So now we're on Wednesday. I went out to the field on Monday. It's now 65 degrees. It was wild weather here in Colorado. And all that stuff started clicking. And so now I'm set for, it's not perfect, but anyway, I got last. I took my medicine, and sometimes I've noticed my art career do that too. Like, I'm going to try to implement this paint technique. It's not going to go well. And you just got to be okay with that and not, at no point did I think I'm a terrible person, I have no value because I'm doing poorly at this thing.
Right.
It's
You
just
have to
an
separate
exercise.
yourself, you the person, from the work.
Correct.
And
Correct.
that's hard to do.
And then you got to go back to work. You got to look at it. Why didn't it work? Why doesn't it look good? Bringing it back to illustration. Why doesn't it look good? Can I change? Is it a color balance? Is it a value? And it's sort of an experimental process that, again, I call it almost failing forward, I think is the best term for that. But you ever have that happen, Will, where you got to kind of go backwards a little bit?
Absolutely. And without getting technical, in pickleball, there's this thing called a third shot drop, where you have to hit this dainty little lofty shot to barely make it over the net so that you can run up to the line and follow it up there. So it takes more time, but also it makes the other player have to hit up, which means they can't hit down or hit a fast shot. They have to also hit a slow up shot, which gets you into the play. Anyway, you can tell when people first start out, they don't want to do that because it feels awkward, it feels stupid, and you have to gain humility. And the same things within your art. You have to gain enough humility to where you go, I'm going to listen to my teachers. I'm going to listen to my instructors. I'm going to listen to what I've learned that is tried and true, proven methods, and trust, right? So that you can go much further. And there's a lot of people that can't that will never get that to that level in their art. They don't trust their teachers, I guess.
Well, it's true. And the other side of that coin, you know how you always have like kind of a running dialogue in your head? You're always sort of talking to yourself. So this is good, this is bad, whatever you're saying. I read this interesting thing. They were talking about regular golf, with a ball and a club, but they were like, if you were coaching somebody and that person was playing poorly, like you're just walking around with them while they're playing and they hit a bad shot, you'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. You can get it on the next shot, or, keep your head up or whatever. But then when people are analyzing their own play, their own performance, I suck. I'm the worst at this. I'll never get this. I'm so terrible. I'm so, you know what I mean? The self-talk that people give themselves it's self-fulfilling, I think. But you'd never talk that way to somebody else,
Right.
as critical as you are. And it was sort of a great lesson to read. Like, I would never tell anybody else that they suck, but then why are people so harsh on themselves? So it's some good takeaways from that kind of stuff.
You wouldn't say that to someone else, but that doesn't mean someone wouldn't say that to you on the internet.
Oh, no, they say it to me all the time. You suck.
No, I recently
That's different.
I recently posted on Twitter recent stuff for my sketchbook, and I just posted some sketchbook pages I was, kind of proud of, whatever. And everyone's, there's 10, 15 comments that are like, hey, this is really good. I love it. Heart emojis or whatever. One person says, does the emoji where the person's got their, they're holding their chin, the little emoji's holding their chin.
Yeah.
Jake, it says, Jake, for some reason, I kind of feel like your style/visual language seems to have stopped evolving. Maybe some more exploration might be good. So, that was a fair critique. Rarely get critiques like that. And,
Wait, somebody said that to you?
Yeah, they did. But the funny thing is I feel the same way, where I'm just like, man, and this has been happening for the last couple of years. Am I stagnating in my style? Am I going to be that guy that forever will be drawing like he drew in his 30s, right, or 20s, and not sort of evolve with the times, or create a style that is still somewhat contemporary, even though it's my style? That's what I keep like coming back to. And I think of like, the masters like Mike Mignola. And if you look at a Hellboy drawing done in 2023 and compare it to a Hellboy drawing done in 1993, he has evolved. It still looks like Hellboy. It still looks like his style, but he has evolved. He's figured out what to strip away, what to add. And I worry that I might be like stuck in that earlier stage and not really pushing myself further.
I think everyone stagnates in their art to some degree.
Well,
we
you've
all
heard the
do.
quote, good is the enemy of great, right?
Yeah.
So, being good is its own lure. Like when you do something, most people like it. So most people aren't in a position
Right.
to even see what that person is talking about.
Right. We're in some ways we're illusionists, right? And once you get good at doing a magic trick, you don't have to. You can just do it, right? You could just wow your audience, the new people that haven't seen it. You come in and you show it to them, and they're like, "How'd you do that?"
Right.
And so we get to a level where you can wow the average person with what you're doing, and there's not much reason to push yourself much further unless you, as an artist from within, have this desire to bleed for your art more. To try new things, to push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Well, I think there's 10-year cycles. And every 10 years, you have to figure out, are you going to stay in? And if you do, how are you going to change? Or are you just going to leave and go do something else? I mean, if you look at the kind of groups of illustrators that go through as working illustrators, you see a bunch of books by all these artists. And then 10 years later, most of those people you don't see anymore. They've changed in some way. They either changed their career. Look at Mary Grand Prix, for example. I guess she sometimes does a children's book. She did the Harry Potter stuff, for those of you guys who don't know. But she's doing like abstract fine art now. She changed.
Right.
Some people will say, oh, I don't like that. But she had to change. Like, she couldn't just keep drawing Harry Potter in this kind of cubist style She had to do something.
She could have, but okay, let's examine those two alternate realities, right? Like depending on her personality, I think that's really what it comes down to, because some people do continue on with that same workload and getting the same type of work, and that's what makes them happy or content or whatever you call it. I would imagine that for her, she got tired of doing what she was doing.
Well, yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? So I think, but I have known some people that are doing the same thing for 30 or 40 years, and they're happy.
That's
doing
rare,
it.
though. I mean, most people cycle through every roughly 10 years. Sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 8, whatever. But people change. Even look at John Klassen, for example. I mean, like, his work has been so far pared down.
Yeah.
Versus, like, you look at the work he did for Coraline and that early stuff. I mean, it's like a different artist. I gotta say, I like that old stuff better. It had an energy to it that's it's very hard to do. Like, there's a lot of John Klassen sort of wannabes now. It's because he's reduced it down so simple. But that stuff he did for Coraline, you got to be at the top of your game to do it. But, I mean, I'm not saying he should be doing that. He found enjoyment and success, obviously a ton of success doing what he's doing. But he changed,
Without naming names, I could think of 5 or 10 illustrators right now that I like their older work better, that they force themselves into a new style. And to me, the new style always seems like there's less work involved. You know what I mean? Like
you're like, I'm getting tired.
Got lazy.
Yeah. So I think change is good if it's good change. Right. But I don't think that all changing just to change, to say, well,
I'm going to show you, if you haven't seen this,
like I'm dated right now. While you're finding that, I think some people change just because they're like, well, I don't want to seem dated, but then they change into something that nobody likes. So.
Right.
That's very true. Okay, so he had this really graphic style. This is probably like authentic, like it was in the 60s, and it was that Bernie Fuchs, like really, really cool style, and he was really good at it. This sort of graphic design kind of sensibility. Look how modern that looks.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And one day, he changed from that. Here, let me open up a new window.
This was Phil Hayes. Is who you're talking about?
Yeah. He changed to where he started doing these hyper real paintings. Let's see if, of course, I can't find one. Okay, there's the new work.
Oh, wow. What the heck?
I mean, the wildest change. He did okay with both styles, but like one day he's like, I am done with this like mid-century graphic design, and I'm going to do hyper-real portraits. And he bailed, and he had another career basically doing this, and that was the new Phil Hayes. I like the old stuff better, like Will was saying.
But that stuff does go out of style. It's back in style, but there was a time like that wouldn't fly in the 80s.
Right.
Nobody wants that stuff in the 80s.
That's right. That's
totally and right. This looks very 80s right here. This these portraits.
I can't stop sharing my screen. How do I do that? Okay, there. No, but
some
we're
say
using some
he's
new
still
software.
sharing his screen to this day.
Anyway, don't be scared to change. Give yourself good positive talk. That's sort of the takeaway, and be okay with retooling, getting a little bit worse for a little while, knowing that you're taking 2 steps back to get 3 steps forward.
Right. Yep. I agree. That's a good little thing to start with. We've got a few questions to go through today, but before we get to that, I just want to say we're wrapping up this year for the podcast. Next episode is going to be sort of a best of episode, and then we're taking a break, and we'll be back at the beginning of the year with our plans and plans and goals for 2024. So check that out. And we just want to say thanks to everybody who's joined us on this podcast journey, who's become a patron, who's been taking classes from SVS and gone and done one of our pro level courses, our Children's Book Pro, and we're also doing our self-publishing pro this next couple of months here. So keep an eye out for that. But we just want to express a little gratitude right here for all of you guys before we get into this next segment. So thank you. All right, first question. It kind of goes along with the Christmas theme. It comes from Robert, and he says, there's no place like a home studio. Are there any tools, programs, equipment that you had while working at the animation studio or universities that you wish you had for your own? Are there any techniques that you learned working at the animation studio or universities that carried over when you went solo? Two different questions there. I want to go with the first one there. If you could have anything that you had working at the university, or resources, assets, working at I worked at an animation studio, what would it be? What would you want to what would your big Christmas present wish be if you could pull something from one of those institutions?
Health insurance.
I know what I would do. Can I start you off?
Let's hear it.
A steady paycheck.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
No, I would loved, my favorite thing ever was the copy and print rooms, where you could just make as many copies as you wanted, laser prints, large format prints of stuff, and you just go in and be like, okay, I need this, this, and this, or you would there'd either be a person working there helping you with it, or that was at the university I worked at, but at the studio, you just had access to the machines. And if you needed something printed, you just sent a file over there and then it would print out for you. And I loved that. I would, if I could have any machine, it would be a risograph printer. I think those things are the coolest. I love I love the style, the print technique that he uses. And I would just use that to make zines all day, but I don't know. I don't have access to one right now, so that's that. What about you, Will?
Well, I never worked in a studio, but I would say health insurance would be one of those things that you'd probably wish you had if you were in a studio. As far as school, I'm dating myself, but we didn't have computers in school. I have a better setup now. Yeah,
but what about when you worked at UVU or BYU? Was there anything that you had access to there that you cared about?
Nope.
All right, Will's really good at this podcast thing. Making conversation.
I wish I had a good answer for this question, but I don't. I mean, I have a Cintiq monitor, an iPad, and a computer, and
he's a simple man. He's got everything he needs.
I'll take over because Will is just flopping on this question.
We lost lead.
When I used to work at the school full time, just being sent, sort of like what you're saying a little bit, but having access to a fund where it would be like, oh, we're going to send you to these master classes or these lectures or SCBWI conference and they pay for you to go. Just having some resources that as a solo person, you just don't have. And the other thing was a schedule. Like, I'm good at scheduling. I still find it difficult being a solo person and scheduling. When I was working full time, it was easier almost to do other stuff. I was doing books and everything at that same time because I knew exactly when I had to be there and when I was leaving. And it just forced me to be organized in a way that I don't have when I'm by myself. And the other side of that was I enjoyed the people. I liked being around the people. I mean, that's one of the things I like about doing this podcast with you guys and running the school with you guys is that if I didn't do that, I would just be here by myself all day, every day. And that drives me crazy, to be honest. I enjoyed going in to talk to the students. I liked seeing their successes, and I learned from their successes and their failures too, and my peers and coworkers. And, everybody had at a school, the same thing as an animation studio, everybody brings in a wide range of skills. And all of a sudden, somebody can be doing something in a way that you never would have thought about. And I miss that. I really miss seeing that stuff. It happens organically in those type environments.
Yeah, that's good. I do appreciate that too. Like being being picked to go on a represent the company or represent the school on a trip, or you're in charge of 10 students to take them to New York City or something and do a museum tour. That'd be fun. We keep talking about doing that like under SVS, and we kind of need like a boss saying, this is what you guys have to do. Now go do it. But when we're our own boss, we're like, no, we can't afford that. I don't have time for it.
Well, it's the problem being your own boss. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. Right. And so we have to pick it. Oh, are we gonna make self-publishing pro, or are we gonna go to Bologna Book Fair? I mean, you can't do, or are we gonna go to Lightbox? You know what I mean? It's all over the place.
Yeah, I agree. All right, last chance, Will. Anything you want to add once you've heard both our answers?
I got nothing. I'm sorry.
Just give me a pickleball paddle in one hand and
I'm
my
simple man.
stylus in the other hand, and I'm good to go.
I'm a simple man.
All right, next question. Someday I would like to just talk about the ideal studio setup, and by that I mean, is it a cooperative space with private, areas? What would that be like?
You guys had that in Provo. Do you miss that, sharing the studio together?
I do.
Yeah. I wish that space we had like I could close a door to my office.
I'm going to find
it could
a
be like
picture
door
really
open,
quick.
talk to Jake, door closed, Jake's busy,
I'm gonna it'll take me a second. We'll keep going, but I'm gonna flash
Okay, well, he's pulling up a photo
picture
of that.
this.
I'm going to read this next question from Kyle. This comes in from Kyle. He says, questionable content in children's books. Now, Kyle is a SVS alumni, and he just released his first children's book. So congrats to him. He was a player in the critique arenas when we were doing that, took a bunch of SVS courses. So this guy is really talented, really cool, skilled illustrator with a quirky style too. I love it. The book just came out. It's called The Garden Witch, and I'm very proud of it. Much thanks to this podcast for directing me through the process. The book has some bits that you don't see much anymore in books for children. Characters die. There's talk about killing each other and a few other little things. The book being risque was a hugely important factor for me, as I loved books like that when I was a kid, like In a Dark, Dark Room, etc. So what kind of things do you wish you could still get away with in children's books? Characters smoking, nudity, crass humor.
That's all part of my next book.
Okay,
Naked kids smoking.
Naked kids smoking. That would be amazing. If you're on YouTube, check out the photos Will's posting of the old studio space. I do miss that. That was cool. We had to.
I was so
blow it
jealous
up.
of you guys having that.
You should have been.
You
Me
should
and
move
Anthony
there.
Wheeler are talking about doing that here, so we'll
You
see.
should do that.
I'd like to.
Seriously.
It just costs money. I mean, gotta think about whether it would work or not, but I would enjoy it. We may get my agent in there too, so that would be 3 of us.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Okay. One thing that I miss in old children's books that there's no way you'd ever see it today is butts. Like naked butts. My kids always loved that. I
Daniel,
always loved
please edit
that.
this out. I do not like where this is going.
No. Every once in a while there'd be like, it was mostly like Maurice Sendak. I feel like he was
Maurice Sendak, but then like David Shannon did it as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, you're reading a book with your kid.
Well,
and they're like, oh my gosh, look, his butt's showing. And then, it just made it more fun. And I don't know that you see that much anymore.
All right. So
Well,
Jake's answer is butts.
who did Curious Garden?
Butts in children's books.
Who did the Curious Garden,
I-
you guys? Peter.
I do think
Brown.
that,
Peter Brown.
He just had a nude butt in one
what
of
about
his
the Curious
books.
Garden?
He Peter Brown just had a new little
He did?
kid running.
Which one?
Hold on. It's called why isn't it coming up under his new book? It's his latest one. It's called Fred Gets Dressed.
Oh,
On the cover,
very
it's
good.
got a nude kid
He's
running.
bringing it back.
This is a book by Peter Brown.
Yeah, Fred Gets Dressed.
Can you share your screen? I haven't seen that one.
Sure. Here we go. Let me bring that down here and move this over here and do this, that, and the other.
Okay, while
and-
he's doing that, I'll tell you. What I wish, I don't know about get away with in children's books. That might be the wrong way to phrase it. I don't like this new, everybody's worried about being sued. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an implied butt. The kid's naked, but from the side kind of running. Yeah, his style is changing too, wouldn't you
There's
guys say?
full on right there.
He sort of mixes it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
He mixes it up every few books, I feel like. I was looking at some of his older stuff, like Flight of the Dodo. And
That was a pretty book.
yeah. Like
Not great writing, but it was a pretty book.
I forgot that he did that book.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally different style than he's doing now. That's a great image. You guys should check this out on YouTube if you get a chance to see what we're seeing. It's pretty amazing. I think the current, what if I could get away with in children's books, is just assuming that kids have a lot of different feelings, and you can write a book where the kid gets to make choices. I'll give you an example of how that's changed. I had a book that the kid is going off, let's just say, on an adventure, perhaps, and then the suggestion from the publisher or my agent is, well, where's the parents? And I'm like, Charlie Brown, if you watch any Charlie Brown special, there's no parents involved, and you might get an abstract version of one every now and again. But these kids are just doing this stuff, right? They're not asking their parents. But he's like, oh, this kid goes out. That sounds dangerous. Maybe they need a helmet. I had a kid on a bike, and that was the critique, is that the kid's not wearing a helmet. I mean, it's just so limiting to think like, okay, the kid's 6. Well, she can't be out exploring in the jungle. What 6-year-old's going to, I mean, they're acting like this is a true story.
Right. I remember, I think it really is for, these books have to go through, either editors are getting like legal training, like here's what our publishing company will not publish, and here are the guidelines, the standards we have to go by. I think it might be something like that, because I know in advertising to kids, and I remember when I worked on made commercials for like Hasbro, we would do commercials for Transformers and G.I. Joe, and there were like strict rules. You could never film the kids shooting something straight at the camera. It had to be shooting this way. And there were like other things where you couldn't have kids, I want to say, no, because we did Nerf. You could have them holding guns, but there was just these like weird little things where you couldn't show a kid doing certain things. And true, if a kid was on a bike or any sort of rollerblades or skateboard or anything, they had to be fully padded up, fully helmeted, all that stuff. That said, I don't,
silly.
I don't let my kids ride a bike without a helmet, but
I'm going to take a swing at the children's book industry right now, because rarely do we get something that's so queued up so well.
pause. Is this something you're going to tell Daniel to edit out later? Shoot.
Okay, it's sort of this. We live in this weird sort of double standard now, where I can't have a kid that walks out of her house without the parents there, because it's too dangerous. But yet, one of the Caldecott, and I'm not saying it shouldn't have won the Caldecott, so don't hammer me for this. But there's a children's book that came out last year. Let's see who the artist was. Floyd Cooper, famous artist. It was about a massacre, and it's a children's book.
Right.
And it was a Tulsa race massacre. I mean, it's a fantastic thing to talk about. It's a great thing to have in media. I don't know if it's a great thing to have for my 5-year-old. But yet, it's such a double standard, because how can we read about a race riot right before bed, but I can't show a kid with no helmet on a bike?
Right. Yeah, but you're assuming that like that book is being used as a bedtime story. It's probably being used as history curriculum.
It is, but kids. I mean, it's just a weird time where people are worried about content and being sued all the time. Publishers are worried about this stuff. And then yet, if it's under the right context, it can get through. And so can kids handle this information or not? And if so, then quit worrying if the character in my story goes out in the jungle and explores.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like if kids can handle race riots, they can handle no helmets. Right.
Right. And I'm not. Yeah, I would rather it go that way. I'm not saying, hey, my kid can't ride a bike in my story without a helmet, so don't publish that book. I'm saying do publish that book, and also let kids explore and play a little more in children's book. Everybody's gotten really worried about being sued. Everybody's too careful to a fault, I think. And, one of the best quotes ever, I was listening to, you guys ever see Rick Rubin on your Instagram feeds by any chance?
Yeah.
Man, you listen to that guy talk. He's amazing. And he said the other day, create the art you're going to create for yourself and make these stories really interesting for yourself. The second you start saying, okay, what does this market want?
You're not making art.
The advertisers want, you dilute it down, and then the stories become just so incredibly boring. But that's what it seems like the publishers sort of look through that lens, like, okay, we don't want to offend this group. We don't want a kid to look like they're in danger. We don't want to get sued because some kid tried what's in the book and then they got hurt. And so, I don't know.
And by the way, I have a bone to pick with Jake, by the way. Because you know how sometimes we argue? You said something the other day, and I went away going, no, I don't like that at all. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but here goes.
This is where I either buckle down and like really dig in on my beliefs, or I just appease you and be like.
So we were talking about. we were talking. Yeah, you're not wrong, but we were talking about self-publishing, and you're like, yeah, you need to get a group together.
This was on text thread?
I think we were just in one of our meetings that went rogue.
Okay.
And you're like, get a bunch of people to play your game. We're talking about making a game, right?
Oh, yeah.
And to look at it and give you all kinds of feedback and stuff. And I'm like, there's and maybe there's some of that's good. But I went away going, that's a good way to second guess everything that you know is right about the thing you're making as well, because it's fun. Like if you, like, I don't know, like I've seen projects before that are ruined by the input of others who
sort of die
really
on the vine, right?
Vision. What's that?
They die on the vine.
Yeah. And, I don't know if here's the thing. If you ask someone to give you input, they're going to give you input. They're like, okay, I got to come up with something smart to tell this person to change, So there's a lot of people that there will be some people, artists that will go, I'm only going to point out things that I feel are either wrong, like grammatical spelling, or let's say you're illustrating something and you have the wrong period. You think that you're doing the right object, but it would be better if it was a different one because of reasons like right and wrong stuff. But what people do is they put their subjective finger in your project, and then all you do come away with going, well, I don't know if they're right or not. And now you're second guessing yourself. So I don't know. I think that I agree with Rick Rubin on that. It's like you got to make the thing that makes you happy, and have your vision and kind of go for it.
Yeah, but at the same time, what was Rick Rubin's job? He's to tell people. Yeah, he's be like, that didn't sound right. You should probably do it like this.
But he was
And
putting
that's
his
how all
vision-
those records became super successful.
Right,
you know?
but you in a lot of ways you could say he was the artist because he was the one that was directing where it went. You know, right?
In a way, I think he does it in a very artistic way. The way to guide a project artistically is to just ask questions. Hey, do you think that intro needs more energy? Like if I asked you that question for your book, then you would go back and say, well, does it need more energy? Why is he saying that?
Yeah.
And then either make the change or not. But it's not me saying, oh, maybe there's a bully in the story and that, you know what I mean? I'm not driving the story. I'm asking questions. And then you are still creating your version of it. Because then you draw the line in the sand again saying, no, the story's about this.
Right.
And I think that's how he works too. I don't think he's like, okay, turn down the drums and you do this. And I don't think he's doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
But
I
Jake
think-
was more
I mean,
making a really dumb comment about like getting tons of people involved in your project, and
Yeah, Jake, that was stupid.
I didn't.
No,
like
no,
that.
no. That was specifically about game testing. Like if you have a game that you're making, I would not release it into the world without someone having played it, without 100 people playing it,
Right.
you know?
I agree with
Because
that.
the worst
I thought
thing
you were
is
talking about. Anyway.
Well,
The worst-
that's a hard thing to do because, you know, do you lean into what the group says? Because if 100 people read your book and they're like, I don't get it, then that means most people are
Well,
probably not going to get it.
a book might be different. Like for a book, I would say trust an editor find an editor that you trust who has the same sensibilities as you, right? Or a group of people who have some of the same sensibilities, who know what you're going for, and who could say, you know what, I know what you're going for, but it's really not right here and here. It's not doing that. That's what you want. I think what you're saying, Will, is you're worried that you don't just go over and like capitulate to every sort of audience, you know, request so that all the rough edges are like worn off, and it's just you're delivering something that's
Right. That's
you know,
just
doesn't even
milquetoast.
look like the thing that you. Yeah, I agree with that, but I think you've got to. I think that might be one of the fatal flaws of sort of self-publishing or like the creator, sort of the self-created world, is that there's so many things released into the world that that didn't have like the eye or the hand of someone who kind of knew what they were doing to help that person. And so you get I've gotten stuff where on one level I really do enjoy like the rawness of it, but I'm like, yeah, this wasn't professional. You know, this wasn't fully professional. So I think, and I think that's why some projects end up being delivered late, and you know, you deliver something that has 100 spelling errors in it, and you know, there's just, I think there should be a phase where sort of a polish, tighten up all the screws, make sure, you know, your setups are getting payoffs, and you're able to see something through the lens of, you know, sometimes you could be just too close to it to like see some of the
That's the
flaws.
sort of American Idol flaw, right? Or Who's Got Talent flaw is that people think something's good and it's not, and they don't know it. And that's what always the fear of self-publishing is that you think it's good, it's not, and you need somebody to be honest. So it's a weird thing. I always thought it'd be fun to have a publish. If I won the lottery, I would have a publishing company, and I would let pro artists who are already proven good storytellers and good image makers make the story they want to make with no editing unless they ask for it. And I guarantee you they would ask for it a little bit. So and I think it'd be interesting though, like basically here's the story the artist wants to tell, unfiltered, unedited for the most part. And I think you'd all of a sudden start to see more interesting stories happen that way. You know, we'll see. I'm actually, we'll see how this plays out. I'll let you guys know an update, but I'm pitching a new book on Thursday, tomorrow. and to an editor. And two people who have seen this pitch both said, "Hey, this is a great story. It'd be better as a middle grade novel." And I'm not a writer of novels, but that's what both people said. And so, maybe that's what's going to come back. But I see it as a picture book. So do I go forward and make it as a picture book by myself, or do I listen to what both of these people said and say, all right.
Was I one of those people?
No. You guys, because I already warned you guys against it because I was already griping about it.
Yeah.
But they both said the same thing. I didn't ask them, hey, does this seem like a YA novel? Both of them said, it's a great story. It seems a little old for a picture book. And so I'm like, and then my answer is, you're stupid. Get away from me. But, we'll see what the editors say. I'll let you guys know. But, that's the stuff. If enough people say that, then I'm the one that's wrong.
Or should Lee buckle down and really make the book that he wants to make and just self-publish it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the next step. But then is everybody going to read it and say, "Oh, this should have been a YA novel"? Or I don't know. You're stuck in this loop of doubt and confusion.
Yeah, what is this? What are you showing us? Will?
I want to go back to the other question, but go ahead, and then I'll jump into this.
No, what was the other question? What do children's books need? They need smoking dogs.
This book came to mind because somehow and I'm showing Mr. Dog by Margaret Weiss Brown, illustrated by Garth Williams on our YouTube channel right now. And this somehow, I don't know how this little book made it into our family book collection. But when my kids were young, one day one of them brought this book to me, and I was reading it to them, and here's excuse me. Here's an excerpt I found on YouTube. When I got to this part, I was like, this isn't a children's book. Crispin had a little kitchen upstairs in his 2-story doghouse where he fixed himself a good dinner 3 times a day because he liked to eat. He liked steaks and chops and roast beef and chopped meat and raw eggs. This evening he made a bone soup with lots of meat in it.
Wow, they're leaning into it.
He gave some to the boy, and the boy liked it. The boy didn't give Crispin his chop bone, but he put some of his bright green vegetable in the soup.
That is an image out of a nightmare.
I know. There's a big old bone.
Dog.
There's this big, huge bone, and the dog is massive, and
yeah, the dog is like 7 feet. It's like a human in a dog costume.
He's got like
chopping
red
up
eyes.
meat in front of a kid.
And I remember going, man, they used to be able to do whatever they wanted. And we can't do that now. And it was really disappointing.
Take that image off the screen. I can't stop laughing. Please.
I was so distracted when I was reading this the first time to my kids. And that was probably like 20 years ago.
Oh my goodness. That's older than 20 years ago, man. That's like from the 60s. And
No. When I read it was 20 years ago. But yeah. And I was like jealous that you could basically probably just do about anything you wanted,
Right.
And one of the things that Kyle asks, can you have death? I think he put that in there, dark things, in a children's book. I wish that we could do more things. I have this theory that kids like to be scared, or they like to be, a little bit scared, not terrified, but just a little frightened.
A little dark, yeah.
And I think that the gatekeepers are a little too, we don't do that. But they don't question. Like once we go into the mode of, we don't do that in children's books, that's it, you're done, and it just gets, the parameters get narrower and narrower and narrower over the years until somebody does something somehow through self-publishing or some crazy editor in a small press or something, and it does really well. And then you can point to that book and go, well, they did it, and they did it really successfully.
You know what I think? You could stop sharing your screen now. I don't need to see that
You want to get that bone?
Please take that off of there. Please.
I think we should, maybe the vocabulary around illustration needs to shift to illustrated books, and these there's illustrated books for kids, and there's illustrated books for teens, and there's illustrated books for adults, and depending on the subject matter. And you could make essentially a children's book not for kids, like the Shantan books that he puts out. I love those. I don't know that a kid would really be into the Days of Summer. Maybe they would.
That's exactly the one I was thinking of too.
Yeah, and that is just like a Twilight Zone style book. There's some post-apocalypticness to it, and whatnot.
Well, even
that
the
is a
Lost
book
Thing and all his books are
like those are books for me. Those aren't books for my 5-year-old, right? So I kind of want to say like, I think like people should be able to, in publishing, in general, in like public vernacular, there needs to be like, hey, these are books made for you as an adult. And yes, it's 32 pages, and yes, it's big pictures and few words, but it's okay for you, a 40-year-old, to read this book and enjoy it, and it doesn't have to be like this sort of medium doesn't have to be just for 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds.
right.
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of arbitrary rules that are placed on everyone. I mean, for example, my main character in this book pitch that I'm doing tomorrow, originally she was 10, and then the feedback I got was, well, 10-year-old's too old for a picture book, and so a 5-year-old reading the book won't be interested in the book if it's a 10-year-old, and I don't agree with that.
Right. That is so not true at all. Younger kids love being in the older kids' lives and thinking about older kids and hoping to be an older kid.
Well, I think too. The other thing though is there's what I just said. Like books should be for everybody. Like you should make a book however you want. There's that, but then there's the reality of business and the marketing machine and this distribution machine that's in place that says, oh, you want to sell 100,000 copies of a book, then it has to check this box, this box, this box, and this box, and then we'll put it in our machine and we will sell it. And
but then they get proven wrong so many times, and I'm
there's
instantly
the $5 table at Barnes and Noble.
I instantly think about Johnny Cash doing a was it a Nirvana cover? I can't remember the last cover that he did before.
9 Inch Nails.
9 Inch Nails, right? Whoever would have thought that would work if
Rick
he
Rubin
pitched
would.
that? And then all of a sudden he does it, and it's amazing. And I think when he was pitching that to the recording company or whatever, they were against that.
No, it was Rick Rubin pitching it to Johnny Cash.
No way. Okay, I knew I'd heard some version of it. Okay, so back to Rick Rubin again. So just combining stuff, like where does that live in the record store or in the, the compartments that is like, okay, this is the Taylor Swift kind of music, and this is, rap music over here. Like, where does that live?
That lives rent-free in my heart.
But I'm just saying, they did it, and then it was good, and then they were like, oh, it doesn't have to fit this exact thing.
Yeah.
But then that's what everybody's worried about, except for Rick Rubin. We need to have Rick Rubin on the podcast.
Who's the Rick Rubin of illustration? That's
Me.
what I want to know. Right. Well, okay, so let's put our money where our mouth is. That's why we need to start a publishing company.
It's Miles Finch. It's Miles Finch, you guys.
We talk about it.
That's right, Miles Finch. You know what? That'd be a great name for a publishing company. Miles Finch Publications.
I love that.
Giant Finch, something like that. Anyways, next question. Did we beat this one to death?
Wow, that was one question.
Yeah. I don't know. It opened up a can of worms. I had a longer one here. We'll save that for next year. And this really quick one is sort of like a meat and potatoes question. Place settings ensures a sit at the table is a subject matter. And I was like, what? Place settings ensure a sit at what are they talking about? Nathan asks, is there an industry standard for project settings, like size of files, or will the client inform you what they need? This is sort of just this is like a question I always thought too, like before I ever worked with any major client. And typically it depends on the project that you're making. So if you're doing playing cards, there's a specific project file size for playing cards. If you're doing children's books, go to a bookstore and bring your ruler with you. There's like 100 different variations of tall, height, and width. And that usually just depends on what that publisher wants to work with. And sometimes the publisher has told me, I don't know, what do you think is good for this book? Square, I'll say square format. Okay, let's do 10 inches. Well, let's do 11. Okay. And then, that's sort of how it was done. Do you guys have any impact or input on that?
I think you should always default to your art director that you're working with and ask them. But if you're just going for print, if something's going to be printed, it's basically 300 DPI is print resolution.
Yeah.
And at original size.
Yeah. 300 DPI original size. And
you can always ask what you can ask for the parameters to change. For example, I did a book where one of the suggestions from the art director was this sort of secondary chase scene that happens throughout the whole book. So that means that there's going to be a lot of characters on the page. And once they made that suggestion, I knew it would be better as a horizontal book. Because then when you have a horizontal format book and then you open it as a spread, it's almost like a skateboard type layout. It's really wide and shorter in terms of height. And it would be a better layout. And so that's exactly what I said. I'm like, if we're going to have this chase happening, I need room to put that in. And they were like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then so the format changed from a vertical to a horizontal. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I want to add, too, like perhaps you're not working for a publisher or an art director or anything. Perhaps you want to make a graphic novel and launch it on Kickstarter. And you want to know, like, I want this graphic novel to look good on the shelf next to my other graphic novels. Is there a standard size? Well, yeah, if you go grab 10 graphic novels off a bookshelf, get out a ruler and measure them, and you're going to find that they all kind of fit in within the same range of sizes. And what I've done before too is just gone on Amazon. Every Amazon entry lists the dimensions for the book that they're doing, and so I'll just go in there and double check it, measure the copy that I have, and then I will set up all my files for my graphic novel to match those things. And
8 by 10 is a standard children's book size. Mm-hmm. So there's another thing if you're self-publishing that you should look for, and that's where the price breaks are. So a lot of times if I'm doing something on my own, I will start keying in information on a website like Print Ninja, for example. If you guys haven't been there, they give you instantly updated changes on parameters. So what's this book going to be if I do a hardcover versus softcover? What is it if I do a tall book versus a wide book, or all that stuff. So you can kind of play with the parameters, and I just watch the price. And so, for example, like a print run, if you do a short print run, your project's going to be very expensive because you don't have too many of them. So say it's like $10 a book. And then if you do 10,000 books, it'll be pennies per book, but you don't need 10,000 books. And so where along that slider bar is the right amount of books to keep the price down and not have too many? So that's how, you can modify your project. Typically it's around, like I noticed for greeting cards, you have to do like 500, and that's where the sweet spot is. 250, if you do 250, you're paying a little bit too much. So 500 is almost the same as 250.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then you either eat you try to sell the rest, or you just recycle them if you can't sell them.
Yeah, give them away. At the end of the day, I mean, I'm always like, if it's going to cost me $35 extra to have 250 more, And cards are easy to store. Unlike, look at Will's background right now. These giant boxes. If it's books or something big, you may make a different decision. But cards are easy. The difference between 250 cards and 500 cards is a tiny difference. You know what I mean?
Right.
So try to find the price breaks is my takeaway there.
Cool. All right. Should we wrap it up?
Let's
wrap.
Okay. Everybody, thank you for joining us on 3-Point Perspective. As always, it's made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts have been Will Terry, Lee White, and Jake Parker. And we just want to give a shout out to our podcast producer, Daniel, too, for putting up with us for this year. Thank you so much, Daniel. It's daniel2.co is his website. Go check him out. Keeper of the curriculum, thank you to him, Austin Shirtlift, for helping us with all of our classes that we've been putting out on SVSLearn. Special thanks to our Shownotes Wrangler, Lily Howell, Chief Operations Officer Lisa Fott. Now, go draw something.